Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to another stream. Glad you all are able to make it tonight, and normally we do Wild West Wednesdays, where we would have a variety of different games on the channel, maybe something new, something exciting, but for tonight, I was very excited of the new patch for teamfight tactics. And because of that, I wanted to play a bit more TFT tonight. Unfortunately, they don't show the TFT patch notes in the actual launcher, but you're gonna have to believe me when I look at the bottom corner and see it's patch 11.10, which means, boy oh boy, are we in for a treat. The big highlights of the patch, I would say the big winners, are Abomination, Forgotten, even with their change, as well as potentially Aphelios, knowing that he can now critically hit. So I'm very excited to be able to start playing tonight, so I don't want to waste too much time before getting into things, but of course, as always on the stream, we have to make sure that we set our arena before we go in. And with that, here we go. So hopefully everybody's having a good day today. Hopefully things are going well for everybody. And we're able to have a nice fun night on the new patch. As you can see in the title, I may be forcing certain buffed comps, particularly some that I have a strong affinity towards, for example, Abomination. Seeing that the Abomination themselves, Brand, and Nunu were all buffed on this patch. Beyond that, the other composition that I'm very excited to run would be something that involves Katarina and Nocturne being primary carries, with either of a 3 or 6 Forgotten composition. So either way, I'm very excited to start the night off here. And I'm very thankful that it was a utility carousel here with crit gloves and bows, because crit gloves and tiers, because any of those items will be useful for the compositions that I'm looking to go. Ideally, I want to have a Brand with a blue buff and some sort of spell damage, or I would want to have a Katarina with a blue buff and Infinity Edge. As you can see for both of those compositions, we're really happy to start off with some form of critical damage, knowing that we can turn Callista into a critical damage carry, Brand into a critical damage carry, Katarina with the assassin traits, the same. They did also do a very important change to Vayne, that I'll buy a Vayne here to be able to show you, but I may not keep her. They nerfed the damage of her true damage at all 3 ranks, but to compensate did give her 5 flat attack damage. More important than that though, they nerfed the shadow version of Jeweled Gauntlet, so she's actually losing out on 20% critical strike damage. The reason why I'm keeping the Vayne here is because it's definitely possible that I could get a 3 Forgotten start, which I find myself with the Thresh. So for now I'm going to run these 3 Forgottens, but I did already find a Callista, who is one of the options for the compositions I was hoping to play. So the way I want to treat the Abomination composition, if I do decide to force it, would be something towards a slow roll at level 6, potentially 5 if I do find a Nunu. The other way I could play the composition is just buy this Hecarim and start running more Forgotten units. Now, I'm okay with that. Realistically speaking, Forgotten is just as, if not more, flexible than Abomination, considering for Abomination we need to get the units, but I'm more than willing to take a few losses here in the early game, albeit losses that are hopefully much closer than a full blowout. So even though our Vayne is bunched up, I do believe that, yeah, Kha'Zix is still going to delete her. Fortunately for us, Thresh is one of the stronger early game units, so it's quite possible that we may potentially win this round. Yeah, very unfortunate that we didn't get the cast off there for Hecarim, as it would have killed the Gragas, and with pulling in towards the Thresh could have led to us winning that round. We're not deterred, however, because we can still grab this Shadow Sword to look towards our Infinity Edge that we were talking about. With the way this game is starting, and us being funneled into Forgotten units, it definitely feels like it could be a very powerful Forgotten start. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to look for a bit of an aggressive level and throw in the other Forgotten unit. Knowing that we would want Katarina as our main carry in the composition with Forgotten Assassins, we want to make sure that we keep this blue buff safe to be used for a regular tier. The reason why I say regular tier is Katarina has exactly 20 mana. Now, in terms of buffs to the composition, we do notice that Hecarim got a buff to his starting mana, so he's able to cast more reliably at the start of the combat. See, he's able to get his cast off here before he gets potentially deleted. Warwick actually ends up dealing more damage at 3 stars, so he's a potential reroll frontline / healing carry. Or, sorry, frontline healing. Victor got a buff at 3 stars to increase his power for shields and for damage. So, I think this game's going to end up being our Forgotten Assassins that we were hoping to play, which is very exciting. What I will do here, however, is I am going to buy this Varus and put him in as a second ranger to be able to make our composition slightly stronger. I'm also going to pick up this LeBlanc because she is a powerful assassin unit who will eventually be replaced by, ideally, Diana. If we're not able to find Diana, we are still happy to have the LeBlanc, as she does contribute crowd control for 2 units. Albeit they've lowered her time that she gets to stun people at higher ranks. So here we grab the sword because a regular Infinity Edge will do much more for us than a Shadow Infinity Edge, because the Shadow Infinity Edge will deal more damage, but Katarina will slowly be chipping away at her own health, which means that we want to make sure that we would either have to force ourselves into buying a healing item, or we would have to, or we can get this regular Infinity Edge and be much better off. That also leaves us with the potential to have a Risk Thirster on Nocturne. That will make him a much more powerful carry. Here, my only debate, as I know I need to start saving up in my economy, is if I sell the LeBlanc to buy the brand to keep myself the Abomination option open, and I think that's what I end up doing. Because we also have the option for a Shadow Deathblade in the event we end up going for Abominations. So I did want to get a feel from the chat. How are you guys doing tonight? Now, as we look into our 6 Forgotten units that we would want to keep. We definitely want Warwick, Thresh, Hecarim, as well as Katarina, and eventually Viego. And our 6th Forgotten unit is very flexible between Victor or Rise. The only major thing we're going to need is defenses and utility. So here we look to buy the Nocturne, as he will be a vital part of our composition. He's going to be our other assassin carry, dealing our physical damage. They also fixed a bug for Nocturne that may let him go a much more damage-oriented build, in that the healing that he used to do with his ability was actually only a flat amount regardless of how much attack damage he had. So we're also really happy that we find the tier here, so we're guaranteed a blue buff when we find Katarina, which makes me much more confident in selling these Abomination units and fully committing, albeit slightly early, to the Forgotten game plan. With that being said, we're also going to put our items and start building them on our board so that we don't fall behind. I'm not sure what best in slot items would be for Nocturne, but knowing that he has a passive as opposed to an active spell, I do think that giving him the potential of a Caustic Deathblade could be very powerful here. Yep, as we were saying, Warwick was going to be one of the premier units from the previous patch and now. It's no surprise that he was able to break through our front line there, as we are running a little bit weaker in terms of our composition. So we're actually going to opt in for the Giant's Belt here so that we can potentially have a much more durable either Warwick or Hecarim. I would prefer to have a much more durable Hecarim, knowing that it is unlikely for me to be going for a 3-star Warwick, as I'm going to be looking to roll at level 7, where I can potentially have 6 Forgotten as well as 2 Assassin. So you may be looking at the composition and saying, alright, how are we going to round it out? What we're going to do is we're going to have the potential of 6 Forgotten and 4 Assassin, or 6 Forgotten, 2 Assassin, and we could be able to have the option of 2 or 3 Revenants as frontline units for Katarina. The last and final option that I'm not as big of a fan of, but is definitely possible if we found more shadow items, would be to just go for a 3 Forgotten, and then only end up having 3 Forgotten with 4 Assassin with the 3 Revenant. So we'll have to see how the game pans out, but depending on when and if we hit Viego, will really determine how we're going to play the composition. But for now, we're just happy to take a win, as it will slow the amount of damage that we're taking over time, and ideally put us in a better position for when we do find our Katarina. So you may notice that we already have, with Victor, a surefire way to put in 6 Forgotten once we find Katarina. The only question becomes what happens with this Shadow Sword, and what we could end up doing as a backup carry if we go 6 Forgotten with a Revenant frontline is potentially have Draven in for an attack damage carry. But it also depends on what we find. We may not find Draven or Katarina, but it'll be very unlikely that we don't find either. So here we look to go into Carousel, and we're going to have our first pick of items. What we're going to be looking for is either another crit glove, a high cost unit, or potentially yet another sword for our Nocturne. So what we find is a crit glove on Lysandra, and what that means is we can have an Infinity Edge on both Nocturne and Katarina. Which means that our 4 assassin composition is looking to be much more ideal. Either with 3 Forgottens or with 6 Forgotten. What we'll look to do here if we win the round is we're going to end up buying this Kha'Zix in hopes that he can be a spare assassin for us that gets us towards 4 when we do find Katarina. I'm also not sure how I want to commit this Shadow Sword yet, but I do know putting it on Vayne is the right play, as it will increase the attack damage and ability power of all of our Forgotten units. So here we get really lucky and we find both a Diana and a LeBlanc, which makes us feel much more confident that we may end up hitting our assassins at a decent pace here. Knowing that we have the 4 assassins ready means that it's much more likely that we could end up going for a 4 assassin, 3 Forgotten route as compared to the Forgottens plus just Forgottens and Assassins. We could also add the Revenant in. So before we continue our leveling, we need to make sure that we're in a decent position to survive, so we will start rolling soon to find Katarina. And by soon, I mean on stage 4-1 once we're able to handle the wolves. So the one thing we weren't able to do in time, which is my apologies, I should have done it a little sooner, is taking out another Forgotten to replace it with another Assassin. What I am going to do here is I'm going to go for the Needlessly Large Rod to potentially provide my team with a little bit more healing and a Gunblade of Immortality. I also think, unless I get Warwick 3-star, that it would be a much stronger play to do something like this. With Hecarim being a solo frontline with some pretty defensive item choices here. Yeah, so as you can see, the power up to 4 Assassins really does help our competition, and even with a 1-star Katarina, which we will now have a 2nd star for, we're putting out a lot more damage, which makes me feel very confident that we can look to start leveling soon. Yeah, hitting most of our Assassins at 2 stars, except for Diana, which is understandable because she's 4 cost, makes me feel that we can start to look to level, and ideally, based on our composition, at level 7, we'll look to put in Ivern. At level 8, we could potentially look to put in Volibear. I'm a little bit less pleased with the composition than I would be normally, because I would much rather have Warwick as our frontline compared to Hecarim if we were able to 3-star him, because along with Volibear for the 2 Brawler trait, it will actually make a large amount of difference for us as the game progresses. But considering our life total is getting very low, we definitely need to start leveling here soon. So I will look to level after the carousel to 7, but I'm hopeful that we can find a Viego on the carousel, because that could change everything for us here. Unfortunately, we don't find the Viego, but we do end up finding another sword, which could lead us to have another damage item for Nocturne. So I'm not sure if Hecarim would be a better frontline as compared to Warwick. I'm really not, but I think he would be because he has such a large value in his soul drain that heals him and buys a lot of time for our assassins. Yeah, so thankfully we're able to immediately find the Draven on our opponent's composition, which means that they no longer have a backline damage source for their Cavalier frontline. Which means that we give ourselves enough health that regardless of what happens on the next round, we can look to go to level 8. And when we do go to level 8, we will not be pushing for level 9. In an ideal world, I kept the Kha'Zix just as a single assassin unit. In the event that we find Viego, we can swap him in over Thresh, and we could actually go 6 assassins, which would very much help us in the damage we'll deal, considering we have 2 Infinity Edge on both of our carries. We would then stay at level 8 and look to roll for Katarinas, Nocturnes, and potential upgrades in another Diana or 2 more Iverns. Yeah, we got very lucky that Katarina was able to survive there with literally 1 HP. But it buys us a bit more time as we go into the late game in stage 5-1. So we're really happy to find another Katarina there, as it does still enable us to look for Katarina as a late game carry of ours. We also managed to hit the 3-star Warwick, which to me is a stronger power point, or point of power I should say. So we managed to actually hit everything on our roll down. No matter how fast we did execute that roll down, we managed to find an additional Ivern, we hit the Viego, we hit a 2-star Diana, and the 3-star Warwick for our front line. So we're feeling extremely confident as we go into this late game. What we could even look to do, depending on how strong we are compared to the lobby, is we could look to sub out the Ivern for Volibear so that we would have a second brawler as a front line. So here I'm going to put the extra ability power on Viego, knowing that he should be able to infiltrate the enemy backline and do a good amount of damage to whatever the carry that they have positioned. And the fact that he deals magic damage per second makes me feel very confident that the ability power will suit him very well. Yeah, so because we have the 6 assassins, the Karma composition with the nerf to Dawnbringers was no match for us. They ended up nerfing Dawnbringers, making it so they could lose their entire health bar before the Dawnbringer heal starts, which puts Karma specifically as the carry for 6 Dawnbringers in a much weaker position, because building her full damage means that she's very susceptible to a fast death. So here we find the Ivern, and I'm not actually sure that we want it, as we would eventually be replacing Ivern with Volibear. In the immediate, however, I will just leave the shop as is, and as we hope for a win, I'll be looking to sell the spare Kha'Zix on our bench to be able to buy the Ivern for the 2-star. Because regardless of us waiting for Viego, the 2-star Ivern will be much more powerful than... Oh, sorry, waiting for Volibear. 2-star Ivern should be much more powerful. Going into the carousel here, we either want to find an item for Nocturne or for Viego. Interestingly, I believe that the Ginsus would be the correct play for Nocturne, or the Gunblade would be correct for Viego. Since we're not able to land that, I do think the play is yet another Infinity Edge, even over the Death Cap on the Diana, because this Infinity Edge will allow Viego to put out consistently increased damage, and it'll make it much more likely that he's able to steal the soul of his target. So we position our units this way because it means that if they have a carry on the left-hand side of the board, up here in the top left, then Nocturne will be able to jump in, LeBlanc will be able to jump in and cause havoc. If they have a carry on the right-hand side of the board, we have a mix of Diana, Viego, and Kha'Zix to be able to try and dismantle their carries on that side. Seeing that we have the 3-star Warwick is really buying a lot of time for us. And the fact that our Katarina is constantly jumping around the map and not having to spend time auto-attacking before throwing the next spear is really, really helping us in maintaining our position in the lobby and potentially even coming ahead in this game. So unfortunately we haven't actually found any volley bears yet, but as you can see, the 2-star Ivern is still buying us a lot of time. The main reason why you would want to go for a volley bear, not just the brawler, as brawler only gives 400 health, is the fact that volley bear, when he uses his ability, does a very large area of effect knockup that also dispels shields. So unfortunately for us, it looks like we're going to be taking a loss here. I don't know if it'll mean that we'll be knocked out, but unfortunately, the rise that the opponent had was able to crowd control our LeBlanc and our Nocturne to stop them from hitting the Draven. However, we do secure a top 4, and that's honestly good enough for us based on the fact that we haven't hit a 3-star of Nocturne or Katarina through any of our rolls or gotten remotely close. We do find that we have a Guardian Angel, which will prove very valuable on Viego to potentially let him hold out longer against these compositions. So what I'm going to end up doing here, as I know that we are playing on a knife's edge, is I'm actually going to sell the Nocturne. As I look to keep rolling. Knowing that if we hit the Katarina, it's a big enough power spike that we can secure ourselves a first place. So as you can see, the area of effect knockup did make all the difference there in clinching a win against the opponent's composition. Unfortunately, we just end up at 1 health for the opponent, so we don't end up with a top 3 here. Noticing that everyone has their carries on this side of the board, what I am going to do is I'm going to move Viego and Lissandra's positions, or sorry, Viego and LeBlanc's positions, knowing that we'll be able to crowd control any of the carries that they should have. I believe this puts us securely in a top 2 position. Yep. Now because we know that no matter what, the game will be ending this round, we're not actually going to look for a 2-star volley bear. And we had to hope to find the 3-star Katarina there. So seeing that the person moved their Zephyr for us, we end up bringing Katarina to the other side of the board so that we can start putting out our crits with healing as soon as possible. Unfortunately, however, Katarina did barely get hit in the Vel'Koz ultimate, but it is possible that against the 2 tanks on the opposing team, our 3-star Warwick can hold out. So it's looking like this is actually going to be a double elimination, and I'm not actually sure who wins here. I think we do because we had less damage taken. But it's really hilarious to see that we have a draw that leads into first place because our 3-star Warwick was able to hold out in overtime versus Tarek and Rel. If that's not a great way to start the night, I'm not sure what is. But I do think that this composition, and especially hitting the Viego early for 6 assassins, really shows the power and potential of Katarina in this new meta, as I would say, after the patch. I'm very glad that I was able to at least hit the Katarina 2-stars, but I think I would have had a more secured win if I would have adjusted Viego and sold the Nocturne sooner to have more aggressive rolling to find Katarina in particular as my carry unit, because I was sitting on 12 extra gold on bench that could have been rolls in earlier rounds, that could have meant finding potentially a 2-star Volibear, or potentially finding ourselves a 2-star Viego, or the 3-star in Katarina. But we're very happy with the way the game turned out, and we're looking forward to moving into the next one. So without wasting any time, we queue back up, and here we go. So Alpha-Chan, I did want to get your opinion. What did you think about the lobby there and the end of the game? The end was Keck W and also Pog. See, I'm glad you agree because I could not help myself but laugh when I saw the hilarity that was that last round. Seeing as I have so many different Hellions in the shop here, I take the Udyr out in the event that I'm able to get gold. No, I didn't mute. I should be coming through all right. It's showing the microphone is lighting up, so fingers crossed that I'm still heard. Oh, maybe I have a huge delay. I mean, if you want, you can refresh the stream. It's possible. I remember previously you had a 10 to 15 second delay. So here, my gut is telling me that I could go Nightbringer Renewer, Coven Renewer, but they did just nerf all of the Coven units individually, especially Lysandra, who was the premier carry for the composition. So I don't feel nearly as comfortable going for that. What I could potentially go, however, is Skirmishers, as they did just buff the Dragonslayer trait, and they also buffed some of the individual units, such as Trundle and Pantheon. What I would be really interested to try this game, however, is a Dragonslayer composition. I'm not exactly sure what I would be running with that, but I do know, of course, I'd have a third Skirmisher, I'd have a... let's think. I'd have a third Skirmisher to have 3 with Pantheon and Trundle. I would have at least 1 more Legionnaire, if not 3 other Legionnaires. And that would put me at 4, 5, 6, 7. So to round out the composition, I may include... I'm not exactly sure who, as Viego would fit the role of both another Skirmisher as well as an Assassin. What I do know in the immediate is that we want to start getting our economy up. And also, we're happy to pick up the Giant's Belt here because we can make a Warmogs to go on to Mordekaiser. So this person looks to definitely be going Skirmishers, which means we may be contested on some of the Skirmisher units that are in the Dragonslayer composition, but we may not end up being completely stonewalled overall if we end up focusing on the Dragonslayers once we get 2-star Trundle and Pantheon. But thankfully we find another Skirmisher here in Lee Sin, so we do feel confident that we can start working towards our Dragonslayers and Skirmishers build. If we end up using Viego as an Assassin and a Skirmisher, that would mean that we would have a total of 7 units, 6 units potentially. If we only end up going for the 4 Dragonslayers and Mordekaiser and a Legionnaire. I do think the best way to round out the composition is to see if there are any Legionnaires who scale really well off of ability power, and I think that would probably end up being someone like a Yasuo, who we could look to itemize. The Udyrs are in sync, very funny. So the first things first, we want to look for Mordekaiser items, and with that, we definitely want to grab an ability power rod. So because we know we're going to sell the Udyr later, we're fine buying this Udyr. We also find a Trundle who's going to be our first Dragonslayer. In the immediate, to add power to our composition, I am going to buy this Kha'Zix and swap it out over the Kled, as I don't see... I was going to say I don't see Kled being super useful, but I can put a Warmogs on him and start itemizing him as if it was Mordekaiser. So if we win, which we may as we have 2-2-stars, we can look to sell the Gragas to get to 20 gold. If we do lose, which is quite likely now that Kennen died without getting his stun off, we may end up just looking for the Kha'Zix as a sell. But thankfully we're able to tear through the set as he doesn't have enough items yet, and we can get 20 gold. So fortunately, we may be able to make 30 gold here if we do come out with a win, but I don't think it's super likely that we come out with a win here. However, we are able to get the cannon stun off, which lets us easily get to 30 gold before even the Krug round on a 3-round win streak. So what we'll actually look to do here is we're going to buy the Yasuo, and we're going to put him in as another Legionnaire along with the Nightbringer, or sorry, as a Legionnaire along with the Nightbringer to start letting us have a more consistent damage output in the front line. So we haven't been getting enough of the correct items to feel confident going for 6 skirmishers, which means I am going to ignore this Nidalee that's showing up in our shop. Knowing the Dragonslayers will be getting ability power makes me feel very confident in the Yasuo, but I'm not sure who else I would want as a Legionnaire, since most of them are focused on attack damage. So I do think that keeping 2 Legionnaires could be enough if we're able to power up the Assassin in Diana. I'm not sure who would want a blue buff in our composition, but seeing that we've managed to find quite a number of tiers here, we can definitely find a user for blue buff at some point. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to make the Jeweled Gauntlet on Udyr here, so that we can have the Jeweled Gauntlet ready for when we do end up with a Mordekaiser. I'm not going to look to roll here at all, and instead I'll be looking to start slow leveling toward level 7, while we can use the advantage that we've accrued so far to our benefit. It's very possible that we may very soon lose our win streak, but we're okay with that, knowing that we can sit with 50 gold and continue on. In the event that we do manage to win, keep our win streak and the 50 gold, we're in an extremely powerful position because we'll be able to start leveling very aggressively without losing our momentum that we've gained. So in order to keep our economy here, we do actually put in the level, and I'm still not sure who could use a blue buff on our team, as we will end up with the potential of some Nightbringers, some Legionnaires, Skirmishers, and the core of the composition is 4 Dragonslayer. But as we look to level, we want to maintain our win streak, knowing that we're getting 3 extra gold per round that we would not normally be getting if we lose that. Seeing as we're first pick on the carousel, there's no way we're going to luck into the Mordekaiser. So it's looking like we're going to have to find a alternate item for our composition With that, I believe that we're going to be looking for potentially magic resistance to power up our Yasuo. So looking now at the composition, it's quite possible that we leave Lee Sin in temporarily as a third Nightbringer, and we could end up running a Darius as a fourth Nightbringer, and with 4 Nightbringers and 4 Dragonslayers, as well as having the 2 Legionnaires, that does leave us open to 1 extra slot. So we could have an additional unit in to round out the composition. I'm not exactly sure who that last unit would be. But I do know that if we wouldn't have leveled up previously, we wouldn't have been able to maintain such an aggressive win streak. Knowing that we'll be looking for Mordekaiser, what we're going to end up doing at level 7 is potentially slow rolling, as we do have a 15% chance to find him, but more than that, we want to make sure we can find Pantheon and potentially additional Trundles. So it's looking like we may lose our win streak here, as their Nidalee is the one being targeted currently by our Udyr. However, that's okay, as we did lose the other person who is as powerful as we are. And what we'll look to do here is we'll immediately switch in our 4 Nightbringer. As we can maintain the 50 gold, and we do sell the Kled here knowing that he's not going to be of use to us anymore. As we look to go to the armory here, we definitely want to find a Mordekaiser item. I'm not exactly sure what that would be, but looking at the compositions in the game, a Shadow Armor would probably be the best item we could find. Barring that, we are very happy to see either of a Shadow Tier or the Negatron. I do think we take the Negatron, as that means we can make a Dragon's Claw for a very durable frontline Mordekaiser. We can also put the Ginsu's Rage Blade on the Yasuo, knowing that we'll try to itemize him as a alternate carry. As we've been starting to lose a little bit more, and we did find a Pantheon, we want to make sure we level here soon so we don't fall behind on the curve and lose our chance to find any Mordekaisers. So for now we buy the Aphelios to put him in as a spare unit, but now that we've hit level 8, it's very plausible that we leave in the Morgana and potentially add in another Mystic to help keep our composition alive. But I don't know if that'll be the best play because we've already got a Dragon's Claw for Mordekaiser. Going into Carousel, we want another bow for Yasuo to enable even more attack speed to make him the powerful backup carry that we need him to be. While I would love to lock this shop as it does find the extra Mystic for us, or find an extra Mystic for us, and does have a Yasuo, I don't think it would be smart seeing as we're still missing Mordekaiser, and every round that we don't give ourselves the chance to find him is a round that will just generally lead to us losing. It's truly unfortunate that we don't have the health here, because what I would do temporarily is I would actually put in the Sejuani, just to get 6 Nightbringers. And I would end up taking out, I'm not sure which unit. I'm just looking realistically. I'm not actually sure if there's a unit I could take out. So, never mind. On further inspection, there's no concern. Yeah, Mord is not showing up for us right now because we don't have an uncontested build. Alright, there was a moment I really thought my units were not going to appear. So in terms of contention for our build here, we know that there was at least one other person running our build. I believe it was this person here has a Mordekaiser. This person here has Mordekaiser, and we are also looking for Mordekaiser. Fortunately, we do find the Mordekaiser now, which is not too late. We do put the Dragonclaw on him as he's more of a tank carry, and we actually put the Rabadons on the Trundle as we want him to be able to steal even more of our opponent's stats. From here, I believe the correct play is to sell this Darius because we're not going to be leveling to 9, and I don't believe he'll be going back in, as we have stronger units in the Kindred as well as all of our current Nightbringers. Thankfully, finding that Mordekaiser really does let us preserve our health and stop our free fall. But I don't think it's enough without finding at least another 2-star unit if possible. Yeah, so we do hit the Pantheon, which will help us a fair bit. However, unfortunately for us, we're still just waiting for the other Mordekaisers to show up. I think the correct play here would be to, and I say this now even though I see our opponent has a 3-star perfectly itemized carry set, so without Trundle targeting them, we're not going to be able to win this round. Because Set's ability actually goes through the attack flow for Bloodthirster, which means that he's able to heal off it, mitigating the damage that he would be taking from the Shadow Crit Glove, or sorry, the Shadow Infinity Edge. For now, all we can really do is wait. Now, it's definitely not the best feeling in the world. Now, seeing as our Trundle cast first, it's actually really bad for us, because that means that their Trundle was able to regain the stats, and as you saw for the single second that Trundle had, the other Trundle had cast, and ours had not, we lost a lot of health and went down to about 100, where Trundle was able to finish us off. So here, I'm tempted to grab the Mordekaiser with the Redemption, but I do think that the Runon's Hurricane is more powerful for Yasuo to potentially open him up as another carry option, or let him continue as a carry option if he's able to stay alive, which unfortunately in that fight he was directly against the Jax, who completely destroyed him. So we do find the Viego here, which means we could drop down to 2 Nightbringer. Means we could potentially drop down to the 2 Nightbringer, but that would also mean that we would want to remove Morgana and Kindred. And without having the flexibility of income right now, I don't think that's the strongest play. Unfortunately, we don't have a way to get to Vel'Koz in the backline, and the fact that he has a double Spear of Shojin means that we're not going to have a chance in this round, which means we will be going out in a 5th place finish. Not the worst that we could have done, absolutely, considering there were many other people going Mordekaiser, but not as good as we were hoping for a top 4. Yeah, considering that the player in 1st was also using Diana and Mordekaiser, and the player in 4th was using Mordekaiser as well as all of our Dragonslayer units, we're happy to take a 5th place here. Yeah, they did make a change a while ago that 4th place will give you +10 at minimum, and will give you more if the game thinks that you should be higher even at a 4th place finish. And a loss in 5th or lower will give you guaranteed -10 LP, if not a little bit more if the game thinks you should be lower. Considering last season we ended in Masters and this season we're midway through Platinum, I would say that the game isn't going to give us anything like a -15 for a loss for 5th place there. As we look to go into the next match, Alpagen, I did want to get your opinion. Are you happy to see the Dowsy, or would you like to see something different? Porcelain Bellswayer it is. No, you got it. Now, I don't have the 3-star for Porcelain Bellswayer, but I do think the 2-star will be just fine. So what I've noticed on the night so far is that there are many people who are looking to force Dragonslayers. And the interesting thing about people going Skirmishers and Dragonslayers is they're very frontline focused and they could potentially be very armor heavy, but they crumple pretty quickly under magic damage. I also noticed in the patch notes, and I have heard this from a couple of other higher level players. Wow, that load screen was so fast I didn't even have time to change the scene. Love to see it, but wow. So what I was trying to say was Spellweavers nor Vel'Koz were nerfed, which puts them both in a quite strong position going into the 11.10 patch. I wouldn't say that they're particularly overpowered, but they're definitely strong against skirmishers, and they will prove powerful over the course of the patch. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to prepare myself to try to go for Abomination, as I know that was one of the compositions I wanted to go on the night, and I already have a tier to start. Sorry, the A-bomb spell? Like the trait? Or if the Abomination had an ability? Because when the Abomination gets its mana to cast, what it does is it gets extra attack speed and I believe lifesteal for a set duration. I'm not sure how many seconds. So So they also did just buff Aatrox to make him a much stronger frontliner, as well as a very good item holder for physical damage carries. If I had the money here, I would level up to 4 to put in Leona, but I think we have a decent chance with 2 2-star units, considering one is 2 cost. I'm also completely open to just going redeemed this game, seeing as I already have a Spear of Shojin and a Sparring Glove that could make a Jeweled Gauntlet for something like a Vel'Koz. So I do think, unfortunately, we lose to this Vladimir because he has a Spear of Shojin and he just has so much healing. Now that we have Leona in, we should be in a much stronger position with the 3 redeemed as well as the 2 Legionnaires this early in the game. The only concern that I have so far is that we don't have another tier, so I'm not feeling quite as comfortable for the Abomination. But we still have a lot of time, so I'm not too worried currently. So not that I would particularly sell the Callista right now, but I definitely want to put in Ashe here, as she will be a much stronger unit in that Aatrox already heals with his ability and doesn't need the Legionnaire trait as much, where Varus with the Ranger buff will put out a lot more damage, since he gets immediately 70% attack speed for 4 seconds, every 4 seconds. Now, I could, if I got a tier, also go the Katarina Assassin build again, but I've already proven that it's pretty strong if you're able to hit the Katarina early, as well as 4 to 6 Assassins. So I do want to try something else for the night. So that's the main reason why I'm not looking for that, even though I'm going to be having a similar item build, hopefully. It's unlikely we'll be able to get a tier on the carousel here, but if possible, we want to prioritize tier, potentially followed by ability power. And if we're unable to get either of those, we may start looking for things like health or Nunu. Thankfully, we do end up getting the tier, which means that we can start to itemize our Brand as a carry. All we're missing is an ability power, and we can put Brand with a blue buff, Infinity Edge, and Jeweled Gauntlet, which would be extremely powerful, and we would then use the Abomination and slow roll for a 3-star Brand as the game progresses. For now, however, we just want to save our gold. We could level up to level 5 here, and I think we will, to potentially try to get a win streak going. Because I would say 2 and 3 wins is not the biggest win streak, but if we can start to get a 4 or 5 win streak, it will really help our economy, as we'll want to use that gold later to look for Brand, and we will probably end up at level 7 for the majority of the game. Knowing that we will end up at level 7, we want to think about what our composition will look like, and it will definitely have Brand, definitely have Callista, it'll definitely have Nunu, and it should have Rise. That's already 4 units. What I would want to do with the other units is I would want to get a Spellweaver, ideally something like a Zyra, that would be able to provide crowd control and utility. The other units that I would want would be another Mystic, because Rise would be a Mystic for us, and potentially a frontline unit. Considering we'd be at level 7, I don't think it's smart to try to think of Volibear as a frontline unit for us. So I would think that we'd be looking towards a different option. If we do end up getting a 3-star Callista, we can also look to find a second Legionnaire. We wouldn't want to keep the Aatrox forever, but we could definitely put in a frontline Legionnaire. I wouldn't say Mordekaiser, but maybe something like a Ribbon. I think Callista's spear just hit a Hellion that was flying out of the portal, and that Hellion just had to get down Mr. President to save the other Ziggs that was behind. Unfortunately, by one auto attack we come out with a loss there, but I don't feel confident throwing any of these items onto Callista. However, moving forward, I think the correct line of play here is to look to either start itemizing Varus or to start itemizing Aatrox, and I think Varus is the stronger option, as his spell buffs allies and he has both a physical and magical damage ratios. We managed to hit a Thieves' Gloves, which is not awful for any of our frontline units. Oh, absolutely, I think Varus is still underrated. Everyone considers him to be a lower tier ranger because Vayne was so overpowered. But he definitely has a lot of utility and power. Normally, my gut says that when you find a 2% unit, you take it and use it for a composition. Since we do have a blue buff, Karma is an option here. All we would need is really an ability power to have a Jeweled Gauntlet. But considering what I said earlier about the nerfs to Dawnbringer, I'm not sure if that would be the way that I would want to use Karma. What I could do is I could go a redeemed build, splashing Karma in as an Invoker, but since I've already put my items on Varus, I don't feel nearly as confident in that. So what we do is we sell the Morgana here to make 30 gold, and we can buy the Syndra as a potential throw-in unit later. There's the ability power that we were hoping for, as well as hitting 2 Nunus. This will really give us an option of finding a brand and starting our Abominations in. So if you were to make a Thieves' Glove on a unit that already has an item, it takes the Thieves' Gloves off and puts them on another unit. I'm not actually sure how Thieves' Gloves interact with the Abomination, but I don't think I'd want to put those on the Abomination. I'd much rather have a stronger damage item. The other thing that I might do instead of making Thieves' Gloves, now that I've already hit my items here, is potentially get an Infinity Edge for Callista, seeing as her spear, I believe, is programmed as an attack, not quite as a spell, so you don't need the Jeweled Gauntlet to critically hit with it. I'm not 100% on that though, so that's something that we could either test or look into as we progress through the game here. So here we hit the brand, and immediately I look at the composition and I don't quite think it's strong enough with just the units that we had in previous. So what I want to do is I do want to get Brand in, put the items on him, get Callista in a separate corner, and I think the correct play here is to sell the Syndra, sell the Leona, but I'm not actually sure what unit I'd be putting in right now. I mean, ideally, I'd love to add in a Spellweaver to be able to let Brand start dealing much higher damage. Alright, you were asking before, what about the Abomination spell? So the monstrosity becomes unstoppable for 30 seconds, getting 220% attack speed, and causing basic attacks to heal for 44% of the damage dealt. I forgot to sell the units because I was too busy talking. That's definitely my bad. As we look into Carousel, we definitely want the sword. If we can't get the sword, then we could take something like a Tear. Or potentially even the bow. The reason why I lean towards the bow is because if we get Infinity Edge on Callista, then we, with a Last Whisper on her or on the Abomination, would be very powerful in letting us deal much more damage. Oh, no need to be sorry, that was completely on me. That was completely on me. What I'm going to look to do here is I'm going to buy the Victor so that way I can get the Spellweaver in. And I'm actually going to start doing a little bit of rolling with my extra gold. Since I was able to hit the units that I needed a fair bit earlier, and I could potentially 3-star my Callista. If not now, then at level 6. I know no matter what, I want to put the bow on Callista, which does mean that that item will go to the Abomination this round, which will be very powerful for us. So as you can see, Brand, with all the magical swirls around him, his spell is constantly dealing damage over time and critically hitting all the opponents. Also, with the Abomination coming to run in, we have a much more powerful front line than we had on previous rounds, which is letting us come out with some wins that we would not have had otherwise. Here we're able to find 2 stars on Nunu and Victor, which makes us feel very, very happy. Depending on what items we get from the wolves here, I may actually get an ability power and put that on Callista to make a Ginsu's. And that Ginsu's would enable me to give the Abomination Ginsu's and let Callista start getting faster and faster attack speed to just keep throwing spears to tear down our opponents. You can also see, if I go open the damage charts here, that Brand's going to start dealing very considerable damage over time. More so than even Nunu, and you can see that the spell is still ticking, as they fixed a bug that the damage for crit bonuses would stop when a unit died. Now that that's been fixed, Brand feels much stronger to be able to deal continuous critical damage over time, even after he's died. So I'm not exactly sure which unit would be ideal to put in at this point. What I do really like to do with this composition as a level 7 is potentially have these exact units plus a Rise, in that we can make a 3 Forgotten, and if we put a shadow item on Rise, then we can have a much more powerful team and Abomination. So I'm fine with leaving the composition as it is for now. Eventually I will want to swap this Legionary out with something else, which does open some possibilities. We definitely want to make sure that we don't miss our chance to buy some Nunus as we go, because finding every additional star on our units works the same as cultists in the last set in that it will power up our Abomination. So what I'm going to look to do here is I'm going to use the Shadow Rod on Callista to make a Shadow Ginsu's. I'm also going to make a Quicksilver and a Hand of Justice on her, because I want to make sure that she's going to be a backup carry of mine, as I am putting in the effort to try to find her as a 3-star. We also end up hitting a, I wouldn't call it necessarily an early rise, but an earlier rise, which is great to see. Fortunately for us, we don't actually need to keep these victors in the event of a loss, as getting a 3-star victor would be useful, but not extremely necessary. Getting the rise also lets us get additional power to our Abomination, that he's going to get extra health and extra attack damage, which is going to be really, really useful when he does come out of the grave. Yeah, you can see the star level increased by putting the gold on the side. If we do end up finding an Abomination Spatula, in the rare event, 5 Abomination is a platinum trait that is extremely powerful. So we want to be mindful not to drop below 50 gold here, but we do want to make sure we use as much time at level 6 as possible, now that we've found the rise, to look for our rolling. At level 7, realistically speaking, we could put in either a Mystic or a Legionnaire, but I do think putting in a Mystic such as Morgana for frontline, Lulu for crowd control, or Lux as a potential shielding could be powerful. Yeah, as you can see, the reason why I wanted to add the Hand of Justice on Callista is it rolled healing this round, which has kept her alive just as well as we would have had with Legionnaire. If not better, because it's 40% healing constantly as opposed to just 50% after casting her spell. We're going to start looking for an item to put on either Nunu or Rise. Ideally, if we can get the Shadow tier, we're going to be feeling very happy, as a Shadow blue buff is one of the best items you can get on Rise. But unfortunately, it would not be one of the best items for the Abomination. Otherwise, I may look to grab the ability power. But I think most importantly than Abomination items is items for my composition. So I grabbed the tier here because this can be used for a number of powerful items, and frankly, we are happy with any of them. This also gives us a point of power to Forgotten. The ideal item would be a very dark blue buff, otherwise a Hand of Vengeance would be good, Spectral Spear of Shojin would be fine, Arc Demon Staff of Immortality would also be great, as would even Static Stiletto. Yeah, so we're only missing one Callista here. From there, we'd be very happy looking to go to level 7, as we could add another unit into our composition and be ready for whenever we end up finding a unit to put into our comp. So unfortunately, our A-Bomb was not able to kill their Vel'Koz very quickly, and as such, we barely lose this fight. The reason why I say barely is our Abomination would have been able to heal itself very well. And thankfully, without much additional effort, actually, that's not true, we've spent a lot of time rolling, but we're able to get our payoff in our Callista 3 with items, and all that we need now is a item component on Rise, and we'll be very happy. I do think running the composition somewhat this way would be the way I'd want to run it. The only difference that I would make is I may even move Victor over to the other side next to the grave. The reason why I did this is because I didn't want to put Callista in a compromising position against any sort of opposing carry. And as you can see with a 3-star Callista, she's doing 265% of her attack damage, plus 1,000 bonus physical damage to the first enemy it hits, and excess damage will continue on, so she could potentially delete 1 if not 2 units. And the fact that she will just keep attacking faster and faster is very, very important for us. Now, it's really funny to note that we've built our brand as our main carry, but we've hit a 3-star Callista and could potentially hit a 3-star Nunu before finding very much in terms of brands. However, we're happy with anything at this point. We should get 1 more item component, if not 2 here. And we're happy with all of it. So, there's something very interesting that was in the previous set. Something very interesting in the previous set that was, we could put a Gunblade on the Nunu, and since he deals true damage, he will be able to heal himself. And also, if we position the units in such a way that the 3 with the items are closest to the Abomination, Rise's item will not go to the Abomination, and we will end up with a Gunblade on the Abomination, which not necessarily the best item for it, but definitely not awful. Unfortunately for us, however, we're versing a very strong skirmisher team with a Jax that has a Giant Slayer, so he will naturally be beating our composition. I want to look to head toward level 8 here because we could definitely round out the comp with an additional Mystic. As well as having a better chance of finding Nunu. If we do take another hard loss though, I will use all of my money to roll down to potentially find a Nunu 3, as the difference in damage goes from 750 to 1800, which is extreme for both the healing and damage in general. Going into Carousel, we also won't have any additional items of importance that we can grab. So what we will look to do is we'll look to grab a defensive item for Nunu to turn him into the front line that we need him to be. So interestingly enough, you'll notice that the Abomination, as soon as it was summoned, created a very, very strong wall against the Hellions. And with her dying breath, Callista threw a spear that obliterated the opposing Ziggs and kept us in that fight. So what I'm looking to do is get us closer to, but not quite level to 8. And what I'll do at that higher level is I can look for the Nunus, I can look for the brands. And there is a potential to find Rise, to find Victor, to find Draven, and to find a Mystic unit that we can put in. I know we did have a Morgana before, but I do personally think that one of the better Mystics we could put in is Lux, as that will fill our other corner and give our front line much more defense. Unfortunately, with the way our composition is currently placed, we just lose to the Vel'Koz lasers, so I may need to swap Callista for sides of the board if I find that more people are stacking towards that side. What I mean by stacking is positioning their composition in a way that most of their units are on the one side. So in terms of a power item for Nunu, we definitely want that Dragon's Claw. Otherwise, we would be happy with the Locket. Especially considering that there are a few heavy magic damage compositions, this Dragon's Claw will come very handy to keep our Nunu alive for a little bit of time at least. Hopefully long enough for us to try to secure a top 4 finish. So hilariously enough, we end up with a natural 2-star Draven. I don't think this really changes anything. I still think we're looking to get ready for levels towards level 8, or sorry, towards stage 6 and then doing a roll down. But I do think the 2-star Draven will make us a lot more survivable and could potentially put us in a better position. I need to swap the positions of Callista and Brand, but overall, I'm not against the way that I've set up the board here if I were to swap their positions. Yeah, there's just so many people going skirmishers, and really the main way to beat skirmishers would be with something that deals heavy magic damage. Unfortunately, we weren't able to hit any more Brands, really, or Nunus. So we're going to have a very difficult time, and since this person is the one with the Giant Slayer, whose itemization is made to completely destroy our Abomination, we're probably going to end up losing here. Especially considering the 3-star in their Thresh. Thankfully, based on our level and being able to put in that unit, we did have just enough health to make it through. But since that person is top of lobby, it's unlikely that we'll be able to hold out for much longer. Thankfully, the Sunfire Cape is a very, very good, potentially best in slot even item for our Nunu, which could be very powerful for us. Since we have an extra Forgotten here, I do think Volibear is an upgrade over Warwick. Knowing that it's unlikely for us to hit 4 Brands at level 8, I'd opt to sell them to get a 2-star Morgana for our frontline. It just seems like even with getting a 3-star Callista, even with getting an early rise for Abominations, it just wasn't powerful enough to pull off a win. So we find ourselves ending in 6th place for this game. Considering the damage threats that are mixed between skirmishers as well as Vel'Koz, I'm noticing a trend that doing a bit of a roll for whatever you can find with Spellweavers is very powerful, as well as running Jax as a carry along with potentially skirmishers. I can't say I'm pleased with the loss, but I can definitely say that I don't mind that the loss happened. What's my opinion on the balance of the set? Well, I think at the start there were some things that were blatantly overpowered. That was very clear. Now, I do think that there are multiple strong compositions that people haven't found yet. But people are gravitating towards 2 or 3 specific compositions every patch, which means that eventually, when they get toned down, we'll be in a pretty even state. But in the early sets, like the early start of the set, it's expected that they're going to be much more powerful by comparison. I personally, if I had any caveat to give about the set, is that there's too much shred of armor and magic resistance. Like, either of the God Kings at 1 star will shred their respective resistance by 70%. Garen for magic and Darius for armor. Couple that with the fact that you have armory for 3 different rounds means that you're guaranteed to get, or sorry, very likely to get powerful items for at least a unit in your composition, which means that you can feel confident in going either attack damage or ability power, and depending on if you roll with the lobby, you may be in an extremely powerful position being, say, the only player going attack damage. So I think the annoyance from the set comes from a mix of the armory as well as the just overall power level of shadow items that are being adjusted, and potentially a shift in design philosophy. I do think there are a couple compositions that are being slept on or maybe haven't been discovered yet. In order for me to try to find something of those, I definitely have to sit down a little bit longer with the set and take a good look at it. Over here we have one of the strongest openers we could get in a 2 Dawnbringer start. If I'm just in general looking at compositions, looking at items, I do think that the Katarina build that I had just played in the first game is probably one of the strongest new builds of the set. We don't actually buy another unit here because if we get gold, we want to make sure we can afford at least Soraka, potentially Set, as that would give us more Dawnbringers and a Brawler, as well as, if I can with gold, get these Draconics to maybe get an early Draconic going. Unfortunately, we got our gold in the form of champions, which means we didn't have enough time to buy any of them. So we are stuck in a position that is less than ideal. Fortunately, we do have 2 assassins we can work with. But it's definitely a sad day that we weren't able to get those early units. I'm making the blue buff here because I do have quite a few Dawnbringers, and in the event that I do want to go Karma, she needs blue buff anyway. In the event I want to go Katarina, she needs blue buff anyway. There are also other viable users of blue buff that I just haven't mentioned right now. Finding the early Nocturne to me really makes me feel that I can look to go the assassin build that I ran in the first game of the evening. So I think that's what I'm going to do. All that I need now are swords and crit gloves, and I'll be feeling very comfortable and in a very powerful position. So I think for now we buy the Leona as it's definitely going to be stronger than Gragas, but we don't want to lose Dawnbringer, so I do think for now we just run this as a composition, leaving LeBlanc on the bench for when we find a Katarina, since she was meant to just be an item holder anyway. In fact, I'm gonna sell the LeBlanc to be able to get over 10 gold to start working on our economy here, because we want to make sure we can get to 50 gold as fast as possible, because that's what enabled us to get the first place last time, was that we had so much gold to work with. Going into carousel here, as I said, priorities would be a crit glove or a sword. Unfortunately for us, both are shadow, but there is a regular sword off to the side that could be another option if it doesn't get taken right now. Yeah. So I can't say I'm surprised by that. And I really do think that we'll end up with some sort of a defensive item here. But thankfully we do grab the crit glove, which is one of our best items. What we could do instead of a regular Infinity Edge is we could put the sacrificial Infinity Edge on Nocturne and look to make Nocturne more of the carry for our composition, with a blue buff, potentially Infinity Edge Katarina, as a secondary carry. First and foremost though, we definitely want to sell that Ash to get above 20 gold. If we were to make Nocturne the carry for example, a 4 Assassins and Revenant comp, we would want to make sure that we have specifically all of Volibear, Ivern, and Nocturne, as well as probably Diana, Katarina, Viego as well. That puts us to 6 units, and with those 6 units, we would feel pretty confident. But we want to make sure we round out the composition, because we will need to go to level 8 in order to find the Nocturne potentially, in order to find Volibear consistently, in order to find Ivern. So we would want to have 2 more units. I'm not exactly sure what those 2 units would be. It could actually just be 6 Assassins with the 2 Revenants as the front line, and I would be okay with that. But I do think that the options of having Forgotten or just having a Revenant frontline are both viable. And I do think that you don't need Forgotten if you have the blue buff plus spell crit on Katarina. Unfortunately for us though, it looks like we're potentially going to be contested, as this person's already got a blue buff with Katarina. I can't say for certain that we'll be contested. I really can't, because blue buff could potentially build into anything. But the fact that he has the Assassins has me curious. So Alphagen, I am curious and I wanted to get your opinion here. What did you think so far of the patch? Unfortunately, it's a game too late for us to get that Abomination spat, but what we could potentially do is this could become a Revenant spat or just an Assassin's Emblem, depending on what we end up finding here. I believe that something like this is the right play because it enables multiple brawlers as an option. In fact, we could run 4 assassins with a 4 brawler frontline. I'm not overly confident on that, but having basically the value of a Warmogs on each of the 4 frontline brawlers does buy a lot of time for our backline assassins to do some work. Since we're not going to hit 50 gold, I do buy the set here.
For something we might need tomorrow. We could furnish a home office, turn the basement into a gym.
But we're totally going to build a dock.
Yeah, apologies for the ad and the music. I'm not sure what happened there. I think that when I started the stream tonight, I may not have started the correct playlist. Yeah, I'm really sorry about that. The one thing I definitely noticed with Nocturne is that he needs some form of attack speed. If at all possible, I'm going to look to get him a Ginsu, as that would really power him up. The reason why I take the Leona out here is that if I want to get to 50 gold and I do end up losing this round, then I want to make sure that I have a unit I can feel comfortable selling. And if I do want to go 4 brawlers as a front line here, I want to make sure that I can sell the Leona. Considering we're so weak, we're going to need to start rolling after Carousel to make sure that we don't fall too far behind. If possible, we would just want to grab a Crit Glove here, as that will enable us to have more assassins as our composition evolves. That opens us up for not needing to find Viego to hit 6 assassin, which is really important, considering we're also going to be looking for Volibear and Iverns. Now, I'm not exactly sure who I would want to make an assassin for the composition, but I am sure that I wanted the Crit Glove to either go for an assassin or potentially for a sword. Seeing that we're so weak right now, we need some way to increase our power level here. So I do need to do a bit of rolling because we're sitting just too weak right now. So we're feeling much better now that we've hit the 4th brawler and we have a Nocturne on our bench towards our idea. Unfortunately, it looks like there are many other people also going for Katarina, which is part of the reason why we haven't seen her. But in the end, when we do find a Katarina, it's going to be better for us, because we will be fairly ready for her. From here, since we are on such a heavy loss streak, we want to try for close losses as we look to level soon. I think positioning something like this will be okay, knowing that we will swap out Nunu, as Set has an armor reduction, albeit a flat armor reduction, so much worse than Vi from Set 4, 4.5, but still a reduction nonetheless. So a little bit unfortunate here that we break our loss streak as we go into the wolves, but better now than much earlier on our loss streak. And no problem. Well, that's interesting. So the fact that we're sitting on such a low amount of gold here at level 7 is really unfortunate for us. Thankfully, we do have the Force of Nature to get us up to 8 units. Unfortunately, however, it means that we're going to have to start saving all of our gold if we want to try to hit level 8, which we definitely do, because we now have the option to get 3 Revenant, which will give Nocturne a much stronger revive. So what we really need here is an ability power to be able to let Nocturne start to scale his attacks infinitely. If we don't get that, then we're probably looking in a very bad place here. So even though it's a shadow ability power, we're still happy with it because Nocturne has innate healing on his spell. And the fact that we have an Infinity Edge on him means that he'll be healing for even more damage. So this is very reminiscent of set 2, where there was a Steel Nocturne, and it was called Blender Nocturne. So what we need to do now is we're actually just going to start saving our our gold towards leveling, as we're going to need to level if we want to hit Ivern and Volibear. We've given up on Katarina, knowing that LeBlanc can serve us better for crowd control, and the upgrades that we want to make would be to probably swap out either Gragas, Warwick, or Set. Probably Set, considering we don't have him 2-starred, and put in a Volibear, as well as adding in Ivern. Another upgrade that we could make is we would look to add in Viego over the Kha'Zix, as it will do much better for an ability power carry as well as crowd control. To that end, I'm going to put the Quicksilver on Kha'Zix, as I know that would eventually want to go onto our Viego. We're very unlikely to get gold here, very unlikely to get items here as we approach the Raptors round, just because we've gotten so many item components already. As we look to go into the late game, we want to make sure that our win streak's able to stay consistent. So we will be looking to level up. We will not be looking to force Katarina. And what we will do potentially is to look towards getting our Nocturne leveled up towards 3 stars, as he is going to be our primary carry. We get really lucky here in finding a Warmogs, and that could be very good on a front line, but considering all of our brawlers have a free Warmogs, who I will actually end up putting that on will be Kha'Zix, who will become Viego, to potentially give more time to get the ability off, and more health to survive as he's casting. The other option, I think, would have been a Diana, just to make sure that with 160 mana cost, she has enough time to get her cast off without dying. What I'll also do if I win is I'll end up selling the set and the LeBlanc. I'll sell the LeBlanc now, but I'll end up selling the set as well as the LeBlanc. So thankfully, you could see Nocturne was able to deal so much damage and heal so much even through the burn of Heimerdinger's turret. That's put us right back on track to be able to get towards level 8 at a decent pace. And what I'll look to do is I'll look to level up next round and make sure I can start saving up some gold, knowing that I'll need to be looking for Nocturnes. Also, based on the positioning of my opponents, what I am going to do is I'm going to put Nocturne in a bit more of a defensible position, because I want to make sure that he doesn't get crowd controlled right off the bat. Yeah, so you can very quickly see the damage that Nocturne's able to put out in obliterating an entire team with Infinity Edge crits that work on 3 different enemies of the Runon's Hurricane. Couple that with the fact that we've got some attack speed on him, he's able to sustain even without a Risk Thirster or a Bloodthirster. Once we look to level, we're going to be looking for 3 units in particular: Viego, Volibear, and Ivern. Barring any of that for now, we are comfortable just throwing in Darius, as he will be an extra Nightbringer, he will be a God King, and he will be able to shred the armor of all of our opposing units, which will help Nocturne a lot in being able to deal his damage and potentially delete our opponents before they're able to delete us. Unfortunately, there's so much crowd control on this round, and we don't have the Revenant buff yet, that our Nocturne got deleted by the Vel'Koz ultimate. And with that, we are definitely going to be losing our win streak here as we look to go into Carousel. In the Carousel, as far as completed items go, we want to try to find an item for Viego, ideally an ability power item. Otherwise, we're going to be looking for a unit, either a Volibear, Viego itself, an Ivern. There are many options of what we can go for here. Unfortunately, we're so low on the Carousel pick, because Viego with Thieves' Gloves is perfectly fine for us and would be an extremely viable option of what we could go. Barring that, we could also just grab the Infinity Edge as a powerful damage option with our Assassins. The last option could have been an Assassin Spatula, but knowing that we don't really want to go 6 Assassins and we'd rather have the Revenants, means that Vel'Koz will stay on the bench and we'll have another Assassin that's guaranteed to critically hit. So unfortunately there, we didn't find any additional Nocturnes or the Volibear or the Ivern. However, we did find a Viego, which was able to corrupt a unit on the opponent's team. Unfortunately for us, however, they have a perfect items Katarina, as well as a Shadow Blue buff Viego with a Guardian Angel and the Draven. So their 9 Forgotten comp is extremely powerful, and without a 3-star Nocturne, or at the very least Revenant, we don't stand a chance. The reason why we roll down to 0 gold there is because if we find the Volibear, or if we find the Ivern, we're able to sell the Darius to be able to afford it. I do think personally that I want to try to move our units more like this and flip the map. Not 100% sure on how I want to do this. I do know that Nocturne wants to start his attacks off away from other units potentially, so he won't be the focus of major crowd control spells. However, we're able to find in this round that we get on top of the Heimerdinger, and giving Viego a Quicksilver ensured that he's able to cast his spell and hopefully corrupt at least a single unit, which will give us advantage going into the next fights. With that, we do secure a top 4, so we're very happy with the way we finish. And the fact that we have another Quicksilver is kind of nice for if we end up finding Volibear. So here, I'm not sure who to put the Quicksilver on, knowing that LeBlanc is going to start providing valuable crowd control, but also knowing the fact that Darius stays alive for a decent amount of time, and the Armor Shred is quite valuable, but I don't want to waste the item, so I think for now I'm going to put it on at least Darius. So unfortunately it's looking like we're going to get eliminated here, because we're up against yet another level 9 player with the 4 Invoker, just general 5 cost and powerful composition. Overall I would say we played the game fairly well, and we worked off what we had. We were able to come away with a 4th place finish, which at the end of the night is all you can really ask for. With that, we were able to get a first at the start of the night, a unfortunate run of I believe 7th and 6th, or sorry, 5th and 6th during the middle of the night, and we were able to end off with a 4th place. So overall, very happy with the night and very happy to see the new direction of the patch. I am a little bit concerned of the power level of just 9 Forgotten, seeing that it's a highly valuable first place composition, considering the fact they buffed almost every Forgotten unit. Just to go through the list here, they buffed Vayne, they buffed Warwick, they buffed Hecarim, they buffed Victor, they buffed Katarina. They did not buff any of the higher cost units, but buffing half of the cast of a Forgotten composition while making Forgotten 9 even stronger with 20 base attack damage and ability power increase, plus also gaining additional bonuses per shadow item, means that Forgotten is going to be a very strong composition, and if their power level is meant to be so high for just going for fast level 9, that could be something to look to run, if not even force, as the patch progresses. For tonight, however, I'm very happy with my work with Assassins. The Katarina buffs proved very valuable. The Nocturne bug fix made him much, much stronger. And even though we weren't able to hit any Revenants, we were still able to make a top 4 with the comp, beating out the likes of a high roll Dawnbringer Karma-esque composition that worked off of some Invokers. But we did unfortunately lose to the ultimate high roll of a level 9 composition with Redeemed, with Ironclad, with Knights, with Dawnbringers, the whole shebang. But some of the key takeaways: Forgotten, very powerful. Abomination, not quite powerful enough yet, in my opinion. Dragonslayer, looking pretty strong. If uncontested, definitely Dragonslayers and or Skirmishers can win a lobby. But as we can see, Coven Renewers, nowhere really to be seen. The nerfs did a very good job there. I do think that we'll start seeing more Nightbringers as a potential composition between the lack of them in general and the bug fix that I've noticed that they ended up doing on Aphelios, along with the buff to Lee Sin as a frontline unit, and potentially even Yasuo being the carry, with a very similar to set 3, where you would have Zed plus Yasuo plus Master Yi with attack speed items. I'm very excited to see Nightbringers in the coming days, and I think on my stream tomorrow night, hopefully I'll be able to be reminded, potentially I may not. I want to make sure to run Nightbringers. I want to make sure to try 9 Forgotten and see if it's as strong as I'm concerned that it is. And I also want to see if I can play flexibly and maybe find something new that we can work with. Corvax, thank you for joining us for the night right near the end. Was able to secure first place tonight running a 6 Assassin composition, using Katarina as a primary carry and Nocturne as a secondary carry. We did end up getting a Warwick 3 as our front line. Volibear made another Revenant with Nocturne, and from there we had 6 Assassin, with Viego being an alternate carry. We then finished a very close 5th place where we had a very large struggle finding Mordekaiser. We were very heavily contested, but I wanted to try specifically 4 Dragonslayers, and I felt one of the better compositions that we could run with the 4 Dragonslayers would be Nightbringers. Seeing as we'd already have the Diana, you can use Yasuo as a physical damage, if not true damage, faster attack speed and true damage carry with alternate items. And Lee Sin for survivability. We then tried to force Abomination. We did, in my opinion, relatively well, finding a Callista 3-star, we were 2 off from a Nunu 3-star, but unfortunately, even with very early, what I would consider to be near perfect, if not perfect items for Brand, we weren't able to be strong enough compared to the powerful late game compositions. So I still think even with the buffs to Abomination, they didn't work well enough. Or if they did want to make the Abomination stronger with the buffs, I do think that Brand would have to be the carry, and you'd want to go for a fast 8. Yeah, A-Bomb's not quite there. And we were able to round out the night with running another Assassin composition, but this time I wanted to focus it on Nocturne as the carry. We got lucky with some spatulas to make a Force of Nature, but unfortunately, you'll notice that we weren't able to find Revenants at all. We wanted to ideally have a 4 Brawler frontline, swap out something like this 1-star set for a Volibear, and swap out this Darius for an Ivern. If we would have normally gone for level 9, but because we had the Force of Nature, we would have had that option. We were so contested on Iverns, and someone had a 2-star Volibear, we weren't finding anything. So we're very happy with the 4th place to end off the night. But yeah, overall, good night. I believe we made some progress. I feel that we're getting a bit of a stronger handle on the meta. Forgotten has been very heavily buffed by over half their units, and they're looking to be the composition to beat for a fast 9 comp. On top of that, the Skirmishers are doing very well since both Pantheon and Trundle got buffed, and Dragonslayers got buffed overall. So there are a few compositions with Skirmishers plus Mordekaiser, like Dragonslayers, Forgotten being extremely powerful, and also the prevalence of Assassins. Assassins, mainly Katarina compositions, but also the bug fix to Nocturne is very powerful. The one composition I didn't see tonight in any of our games that I was sure I would see, so I'm very surprised, and I was talking about this, was I want to run Nightbringer. They bug fixed Ophelio, so now his spell can crit. Oh, the Nocturne bug. Very glad you asked. Nocturne before was only healing on a pre-calculated amount. So based on his base stats, based on his star level, was the heal he was getting on every third attack. Now, that every third attack heal is based on items. And also is based on how many units he hits, as it's supposed to be. Which is why, at one point in the game, this Nocturne had done, I think, something to the tune of 11,000 damage. I have to go back and check the VOD. And I was so impressed that I went and checked the healing. He healed himself for about 3,000 health, and he only had like 1,200. So I'm confident that Nocturne will be a carry, that Katarina will be a carry, and that Assassins are back on the menu as 4 or 6, because you don't need to have them as all 6 to be able for them to be very, very powerful. They have good frontline options in Revenants, they have good frontline options in Brawlers. You could also run, and I did this the other night to a great success, even before the buffs, Forgotten plus Katarina, because you can get 6 Forgotten plus 4 Assassin, because Viego and Katarina are both Forgotten Assassins. So there are some powerful compositions that I think are being underutilized because certain ones are just so prevalent and powerful. But I do agree that if you're gonna go Forgotten, you just go 9 Forgotten. Like, it's so powerful now that they've buffed the 9 Forgotten to have 160 attack damage and ability power, plus the 10% increases per shadow item. It just makes it very, very powerful. If not, like, one item Draven in a 9 Forgotten was able to completely carry for their physical damage needs. Katarina and Viego provide their magic damage, and everyone else is just there to buy time. It's extremely powerful. I don't think the Knights or the Mystic buffs were enough, personally speaking, because even if you were to go Knights and you were to go 6 Knights, there's realistically no carry for that composition. Like, yes, you go 6 Knights, you can use Nightbringers with Darius, and what you do with the last 2 units is you could have a Kale, and you could have a Rel, for example, giving you 6 Knights, 3 Redeemed, and the ability to have a backline unit that over time will just ramp up and carry the game. Heck, you'd even probably be better off with Garen just because he gives himself a health shield that buys you more time. But the fact that Assassins are strong now means Kale will die quickly. The fact that Forgotten is consistently chased as a trait means that they have 2 Assassins that will be jumping your Kale on either side of the map. The fact that you have Skirmishers now means that they will consistently get more attack damage, so the longer the fight goes, the better it actually is for them. And unless you get a 2-star Kale, you're going to be in a very difficult spot. So I'm really torn. Like, I know 6 Knight is a composition. 6 Knight plus a Rel plus either a Vel'Koz as a magic damage corner carry, or a Kale in a corner carry would be very powerful. So I want to make a mental note for tomorrow. The compositions that I want to try are going to be 6 Knights, Nightbringers, and I want to try to force Forgotten for a game and see if it's as powerful as I'm afraid of. I'm not sure if there were any other compositions that you guys have thought of potentially off the patch. Yeah, tomorrow night is going to call for Knights. Tomorrow night is going to call for 6 Nightbringer, at the very least 4. 4 or 6 Nightbringer with the new Aphelios. And also, I want to try to test 9 Forgotten. So with that, I'm going to call the stream for the night. I did spend the last 10-15 minutes with some theory crafting, but I am extremely excited for the new patch. Once again, thank you everybody for watching. Hopefully you were able to learn something tonight. Hopefully it gave you a little bit of a better insight into the patch. With that, I am going to end the stream here. So I hope everybody has a great night and you're all staying safe. Take care.